Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Utah Senator Mitt Romney, who claims to be a Republican, is out of touch, of course, with the party's base. Romney, in an interview on Sunday on MSNBC, said he laughs at the phrase America First and questioned the growing sentiment of what he terms isolationism within the GOP. Romney told host Stephanie Ruley that, quote, it is unimaginable that in the party of Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain and others that we would see a growing isolationism in our party, end quote. He also took a shot at Tucker Carlson, blaming him and others for the, quote, populist streak, end quote, among conservative Americans. Watch this.
It's to someone like me, it's unimaginable that in the party of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain and others, that we would see a growing isolationism within our party. I think it flows in part from talk TV, talk radio, the Tucker Carlson of the world.
Never heard of him.
Exactly. That say outrageous things, and the base says, yeah, exactly. And so many in our party have followed that populist streak, which is, hey, stop worrying about the rest of the world. Just worry about what's going on here. What they're forgetting is that we are connected to the rest of the world, that our economy is connected to the rest of the world, that if we'd have had that attitude, then Germany would have ended up ruling the world. All right, we're involved in the world out of our own self-interest. I laugh at the phrase America First. I know it typically means, isolationism, but really, America is putting ourselves first when we're involved in the world, when we stop bad people. Look, if Vladimir Putin goes not just through Ukraine, but then decides to go into Poland, then we're involved in conflict with our sons and daughters going to war. Or we could walk away from NATO, in which case Putin is going to keep on going and going. How about a world where China and Russia control the world and we have our own little island? That's not a world where Americans are going to be safe or prosperous. We're safe and prosperous when the world follows the orders that have existed over the last 75 years with a strong NATO, strong allies, strong friends, and where America stands for something like freedom.
Notice how he spun that conversation, claiming globalism is always, quote, in our own self-interest, end quote. Then he repeated the very tired neocon trop, comparing Putin to Hitler. Vladimir Putin wants to take over the world. That's what they're telling us. I have no proof as of now that Vladimir Putin wants to take over the world. Now, if that comes out, I'll gladly report it. I think only a dishonest politician like Romney would make such a statement. And obviously, you can tell that, well, this lapdog interviewer from MSNBC did not push back. Not once. Of course, they never do. But these diehard globalists, they're a dying breed. And whenever they run for high office, well, they get trounced. Romney, John McCain, Nikki Haley, none of them had a message that resonated anywhere close to the heart of the American people. Why? Because Americans, they're tired. Working Americans who pay taxes off their hard work are tired of war. They're tired of sending their tax dollars overseas. And they're tired of adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. They see where it's leading, to a complete collapse of the dollar and our way of life, just as Robert Kiyosaki's been warning, just as we've been warning. I began telling my audience in 2023, early 2023, stop using the I word, inflation. Get used to the H word, hyperinflation. But these globalists, they will not give up their worldview of America being the policeman of the world. Why? Well, because it's very profitable for them, folks, and their buddies in the military-industrial complex. And they know they will never have to worry about the downside of their globalist policies because their sons and their daughters and their grandsons and their granddaughters will never go overseas to fight and die in their needless wars that they will not let them win like they did in Vietnam. Mitt Romney, I think, is, like all globalists, a self-interested political hack who claims to be an advocate of America's national interest, but is not. But let me tell you something. Their perverted and twisted outlook on the world Well, it almost always ends with a flag-draped coffin, multiple coffins being flown back to devastated parents and families. And I won't be giving my sons or my daughters to defend this globalist money interest garbage in Ukraine or anywhere else. If America is ever invaded and we need to defend American soil, that's a different story. But I, and I'm sure many of you, we will not give up our sons and our daughters to defend another country's borders halfway around the world. I'm sorry, Mitt. That is non-negotiable. And let's remember something, Mitt. You work for the federal government and your state, but you better understand this. We, the people, the states, created the federal government. So don't think you're going to tell us what we get to do. We are the sovereign in this relationship. We created you. We will not tolerate being the slaves of you and your buddies and moneyed interest in big banking and the military-industrial complex. And by the way, Americans are onto you. They know you are a fraud, just like George W. Bush was a fraud. Just like his father was a fraud. Your entire globalist foreign policy agenda is built on lies that have been concocted over many years by your buddies at the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and all these globalist NGOs that have a stranglehold over our federal agencies, especially the Department of Defense, and you know the CIA and the Department of State. Yeah, that CIA that murdered a sitting president in broad daylight who was literally pulling what little troops we had out of Vietnam. And then when he was killed, they escalated. And look at how many flag-draped coffins came home due to a war that did not have to happen. Or if it did, we could have won it and gotten out fast. But they would not let our guys win. And I have the documentaries to prove that with the testimony from the men that were the top military leaders who came out afterwards and said they wouldn't let us win. So hopefully Americans are wising up to the lies so that the next time around, when they try to tell us Putin's going to take over the world, if we don't stop him, they'll realize, wait a minute, there's no proof of that yet. And take over the world, if that's the case, maybe we'd better be getting ready to defend ourselves here. Because I'll tell you something, China is sending their people here. The Islamists are sending their people here. We're not defending our border, but we're worried about Ukraine and their border with Russia. What are we doing about ours? I'm not even sure that Putin has the manpower to take over the world. I do know this. He could devastate us with a nuclear strike. And that won't be fun for the globalists and their families, despite their well-fortified bunkers. But apparently they're dead set on getting us into World War III. It's time for some of us to get a little righteous indignation.